Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. We hope that you've had a restful, rejuvenating Shabbat and that your heart is glowing as bright as a Havdalah candle. This week's Torah portion is familiar to all. It's the story of Joseph, a bright young lad from a big family, and how unresolved issues can tear a family apart from the inside out. Now, you're probably expecting me to talk about the flocks, right? I mean, that's my claim to fame. I can pull sheep out of anything. And I thought about it, but then I stumbled across a far more interesting theme in this week's Parsha, that of lost clothing. There's a lot of loss without preparation. Let's get into it. So the inciting incident for Joseph's enslavement is his fancy new coat, a gift from Pops that to the older brothers felt like salt in a wound. Now, it might feel crummy to feel like you're not your parents' favorite, but to have that fact materially confirmed is an emotional knife to the heart. So, they made a bad choice. They stole his coat, they tore it up, they returned it to Joseph as part of a lie. Clothing number 1. Joseph schlepped all the way to Egypt behind the back end of a camel, half naked, but still apparently pretty good looking because he had no trouble becoming top slave and finding a new coat in Potiphar's house. But then the story of Joseph comes to a screeching halt, and we changed the channel to Days of Our Judah, which is a soap opera that will tie into Parshat Vayigash. So for our purposes tonight, here's the TV guide synopsis. Judah has some sex he shouldn't have had with someone he shouldn't have had it with and leaves his coat behind. Clothing number 2. Later on, he tries his best to condemn his baby mama to death and gets called on his BS when she presents his coat to the Beit Din. End of interlude. Back to Joseph. Potiphar was a macher. He was a big man around town. He knew all the right people in all the right pyramids. And he was married to one of the real housewives of the Nile, who thought she'd get a little hieroglyph delight from the bronze country boy that Potiphar trusted enough to leave alone at home with her. Joseph fled, leaving coat number 3 in Mrs. Potiphar's clutches. Now, how could a coat land him in jail for a sexual assault that he did not consent to, nor did he perform? Well, because like any good Jewish kid that's been to camp, he wrote his name on the inside. So Joseph spends many years in prison, where he works eagerly for the warden like he had for Potiphar. And there don't seem to be many women around. Nobody accuses him of being anyone's favorite, and he makes some friends that he wouldn't otherwise have met. Servants of Pharaoh himself. That's a pretty good deal for him, because it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? So what's this got to do with us? Well, I know I've felt an awful lot like Joseph this year. I had plans. Things were ticking right along for me, and bam! Right into the pit of COVID. We may not have traveled to Egypt. I mean, really, we shouldn't travel at all. But we're definitely struggling to navigate a different world than the one we're used to. We've been separated from family and friends. We're separated from our faith communities. School is different, and some things are so darn complicated, we'd rather avoid facing them at all. We've lost people. We haven't been able to grieve properly. We're all in a prison of ongoing traumatic stress, and our sentence is at a whim of pharaohs, political, social, and scientific. Every time we're on the verge of finding a rhythm, there's another lockdown, or someone close to us falls ill, or our medical appointment is canceled, or unemployment runs out, or our clothing is snatched from us. And we're standing in a desert, half naked, feeling very alone. Poor old Jacob, who gave Joseph his coat, received that same garment back in bloody tatters. He lived with the loss of his favorite son, racked with anguish. He refused to be consoled by his remaining family, and he tore his garments in grief. Clothing number 4, the original Korea. Judah, who snatched Joseph's coat and sold him, who lay with a woman he was then willing to murder, also had his coat snatched. His wife and son died. His brothers condemned him and cast him out of the family. He lived with his guilt for 20 years. Judah was a macher in the sheep industry. And he felt naked, alone, and imprisoned in darkness too. 4 coats. What can we learn from all that has happened? Everyone experiencing the same loss, yet not experiencing it together and not processing it in the same way. What do we choose to carry forward? Jacob grieves continuously. What survival techniques have we picked up that hinder our healing? Judah makes a series of poor choices that lead to self-discovery, repentance, empowerment, and ultimately reconciliation. What are the gifts we're being given? Joseph cerebralizes his suffering, though, as we'll see in later parshas, he'll have to confront his emotional pain in order to heal. When he got to Egypt, Joseph learned. In Potiphar's house, he learned. In prison, he worked and honed his gifts. He was always moving up. How can we be part of a community during our quarantine prison? I can hear you saying, I don't know. And that's okay. There's a repeating phrase in this parsha. For Adonai was with him, and whatever he did, Adonai made prosper. We get so anxious, like my border collie, about making things happen. It's part of that American spirit of independence and drive, of being productive and self-made. Joseph did all that he could in every situation, that's true. And then Adonai made it prosper. So if you're willing and able, take a moment before you light your candles. Pick a word or a phrase that best captures how you'd like to feel. That's your candle. You can do a word for each candle that you light if you like. If you can't imagine how you'd like to be, think of the blessings you have now and light a candle as an act of gratitude. Focus on the word. See it as though it's actually real right now. Breathe in. And as you exhale, let everything else go. Now light your candle and let the flame in front of you ignite your flame within. God will take care of the rest. Happy third night.
No one here to guide you. Now you're on your own. Only me beside you. Still you're not alone. No one is alone. Truly, no one is alone. Sometimes people leave you. No one's gonna harm you. Halfway through the wood. Not while I'm around. Others may deceive you. No one's gonna harm you. You decide what's good. No, sir. You decide alone. But no one is alone. People make mistakes. Hiding others' words. People make mistakes. Everybody makes one another's terrible mistakes.
Witches can be right.
Giants can be good.
You decide what's right.
You decide what's good. Just remember someone is on your
No one's
side.
gonna harm you.
Someone else is not.
No one's gonna dare.
While you're seeing your side.
Others may desert you.
Maybe you forgot.
Whistle, I'll be there.
You're not alone.
No one is alone. Hard to see the light now.
Just don't let it